Welcome back to Sacred Laughter Podcast. I am your host, Chris Damron, and today we're talking about something that's tough, but a reality many of us face at some point, and that is losing a job. Whether it's unexpected, the result of a company restructuring, or just a tough market. Losing your job can feel like a huge hit, but today we're going to talk about how to move forward and find strength in the process. And I'm not doing this alone. I'm joined by a very special guest who has an incredible story of resilience and growth after losing their job. And I want to welcome my brother, Paul Damron.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So let's start with your story. Can you share a little bit about your journey? How did you end up losing your job? And what was going through your mind when it happened? And how did that impact your family?
Yeah, so you're right. It does reality hit a lot of us and at unexpected times, and this for sure hit me and my family at an unexpected time. One of those moments in life that I'll never forget because of the just because of the pivot we had to make as a family, a small family at the time. And so, yeah, I was going to Southern Utah University for school, heard about a job opportunity opening up in my hometown. And that was a goal of mine and my wife's to get back to, where we grew up. We wanted to be able to raise a family, and this was an opportunity to get back home. Little did we know that that was not the or less the lesson that I needed to learn, or we needed to learn. But so fast forward to my last year of college, I was able to move everything online. And back in 2008, that was not common to do remote learning at the time, especially the classes that I was trying to finish up. A lot of them were research related to the field that I was studying, which was geographic information systems. And so worked with all my instructors and got their blessing to do the remote working or learning and move back home. And, we were excited. My wife was, her name's Becca, so I'll refer to her as Becca. But, Becca was a nurse, a registered nurse, and she was able to get jobs wherever. And I felt like as soon as I got out of college, I'll be the breadwinner and help support our family. And so we both, jumped in this opportunity together. She was able to get a job at the hospital in town, and life was great. We rented a home near the house I grew up in. Small town, as you know, it's not hard to get around. We still had family in town, which was good. That's what we wanted. We wanted to be close to family. And so, fast forward months and months of working and learning and getting on the job experience. I was, sharpening my skills as a GIS, geographic information analyst, and doing a lot of work in the oil and gas industry. And some words that our father told us, which you when you're young, you don't like to admit that dad's right. But he did tell me when I took this job that the oil fields do indeed dry up. And you may think you're going to get a nice, steady paying job for years to come, and they're promising you that. But in reality, he said that you'll have to move on. Things will change, things will happen. And I ignored it. I said, no, it's not going to happen to me. The economy's doing real well. We're great. They've assured me that it's going to be great. And so, not sure I've ever admitted that to Dad, but I'm sure when he listens to this podcast, he'll get a good chuckle out of that. But,
Yeah.
I've learned throughout my career that there's a lot of politics involved in a lot of different things, and this was one of them. There was a change in presidential candidacy from a Republican to a Democratic one. We were in the office, knew that there was going to be some stuff happening. Um, didn't know what, didn't know who it would affect and that type of stuff. We were all told leading into the next year that our jobs are fine. We have projects. Don't worry about your job, this and that. And um, I'll remember it like it was yesterday. And mind you, Becca was 8 months pregnant, maybe close to 9 months pregnant with our second son, Bridger. And I got the call after several meetings, company-wide meetings, telling us that everything's going to be fine. I got a call from my manager upstairs and went and visited with him. And he said, hey, give me a report on the projects you're doing. It was like any other meeting. And sure enough, right at the end of that, he said, so how long do you think you've got for those projects? And I said, oh, depends on, how quickly they need them. If you needed them turned around real quick, I think I can get it done in 3 weeks, maybe stretch out to a month. And he says, well, let's do it in 3 weeks, and then that'll be your last day here. I was devastated. I said, that's how you're going to tell me I'm being laid off?
Right.
And, there was no severance letter or envelope or nothing. It was just, yeah, that's what we've got to do. I was asked to reduce our workforce, and, you and there was another individual that was hired after me. He said, you guys are on the list. And so I said, well, I've got to digest what was just said, but, I'm going to take the rest of the day off as a sick day. I'm going to go try and figure things out with Becca.
Yeah.
And so that was the start of it. Little did I know that the Lord does work in mysterious ways, and doors were open to us. And looking back, a lot of lessons were learned. Trust in the Lord, and and he'll help us out. And I haven't had to. I mean, there's been times throughout my life that I've had to trust in the Lord before, but this really was one of those saving grace moments that he stretched out his arms and helped, for sure.
Yeah.
So we were packing up our home, gonna move in with my in-laws. They luckily had an apartment in their basement that they said we could live in, and had no idea what I was going to do for work at the time. And I remember the last load, I was moving from one house to another on the end of town, and I got a call from my, I worked for Zion National Park fighting wildland fires for several years during college, and he called me back and called me up and said, hey, you've got rehire status. I heard you lost your job. Your position's still open from the last time you left it. Would you like to come back? And in a heartbeat, I said yes. I don't know what else I'd do. And mind you, I'm a man. I want to make sure I can provide for our family.
Yeah.
And so without hesitating, I said yes, and let Becca know that I got our old job back, which meant that we had to move back down to Cedar City. Which, looking back at it, she's blessed me in ways that I'll never know. She packed everything up and said, let's do it. Followed me and said, we've got to do what we need to do. And there was a short time where we were able to figure things out while we were living with my in-laws still back at our hometown. And we had our son, Bridger. She delivered Bridger. Delivery went smooth. And I can't remember the time between when I lost my job to when he was born, but it was quick. It was not a long time. And he was born with I don't want to call it a deformity, but it was fixed. He was born with club feet.
Yeah.
Had no idea what that was, what that meant. I remember still looking at him underneath the light when the nurses were taking care of him right after he was delivered, and asking Becca, looking up and saying, what's wrong? And I said nothing. He's great. And, I haven't had a chance to talk about this, um, in an, opportunity to talk
Yeah.
in such a sacred way, but, um, he, he was fine. Everything, he was a healthy baby boy, and, um, he, through the support of family and loved ones, we were able to figure out what we needed to do. We leaned on professionals to say, okay, what's next? What do we need to do to help him? And um, without, to be honest with you, without losing my job, I still think we'd be paying for medical bills to this day. And it's been um, nearly almost 16 years. I
Yeah.
mean, he turned 16 less than a month. And had I kept my job, that insurance would have paid and helped pay and support that. But where I lost my job and we were a, a one family income at the time, we were able to get that government support and assistance to help us through this. And I don't know what we would have done without it. And
Yeah.
so we look back at this moment and thank the Lord for teaching us a lesson, a hard lesson, because we didn't know our whole world was changed because of losing my job, but we were able to attend the doctor appointments in Salt Lake City, which was a 2.5 hour drive every week. And so I think for the first 3 months of his life, that's what we did. Um, and it allowed Becca and I to be close to him and to to nurture him a little different than we'd done the rest of our sons.
Yeah.
But the Lord does for sure have a hand in everything.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go back to um, when you were notified about the loss of your job, how your boss or your manager was like, hey, I'm going to, like, hey, how much time you have left on this project? And then you were informed that, hey, after the 3-week project's like, hey, you're off, you're done. You're going to remove you from your position and we're going to pretty much remove you from the company being fired. I think you said it in a way that a lot of people don't take it. And honestly, I've never been in that situation, right? Just because my background and where I'm kind of going now with my life. But one thing that sticks out to me was, you did more like the professional way. I mean, you just asked like, hey, I'm going to take the rest of the day off and just talk to my family. Where in a lot of cases, a lot of people, I would probably say lack the maturity there,
Mm-hmm.
and then they want to argue and fight or have a longer conversation with their manager about why the things are happening. And I don't know if you can remember, but do you think at any point during that conversation that maybe that came across your mind, if you can remember, or do you think that no matter what you did or what you said, it wouldn't have mattered?
I can remember that I did think of, one thing comes to mind was respect. Did I have the respect towards my manager to give him the benefit of the doubt? And I don't think I really did. But at that point, I felt like there was nothing else I could do or say to him um, that would change his mind. The company had made its decision. A handful of us were going to be laid off, and I was on the block, and I knew that I couldn't sit there and argue about it, let him know how I felt. It just wasn't going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just kind of thought, okay, I need a minute. This is a lot to take in. I can't believe this is happening to me. I'm going to be, I didn't ask if I could take the rest of the day off. I said, I'm going to take the rest of the day off.
Oh, and you just told them.
I just told him, I said, I can't sit down at my desk and do the work that you're needing me to do, knowing that, I just was laid off. So I'm taking the rest of the day off.
Yeah.
And I think he was surprised, if I can remember, maybe didn't know what to say at the time, but he was just a puppet. And I say that in all respect.
Yeah.
Uh, he was given orders and he had to do his managerial duty and say, these people are being laid off, you got to do it. And
Yeah.
so it wasn't him I needed to be mad at. It was how the company maybe was spending their funds.
Yeah.
Could they be could they have done less spending around Christmas time and bonuses and this type of stuff to extend people's employment? There's a lot of stuff I think about now, but in hindsight, I'm doing really well.
Yeah.
It's part of my journey. It's part of my journey.
Yeah. And I think you said it right where like you said, you want to use the term very tight-lipped, for the respect of it, as the puppet, because I mean, as you know, you probably, I mean, you have been in managerial positions and you've had, employees and clients that you've worked with that, you trust and you care about. And then now you're told, hey, you got to lay someone off. So for the person that has to do that, they have to, you know, take that deep look inside and, how are they going to go about this, even though they do share the respect for that person, but how are you going to do it in a comforting way that isn't going to blow up in their face or potentially blow up to a point where now they're talking bad about the organization or talking bad about the employees or the staff. That's, now it's going to hinder their workflow or their name within the business.
Yeah. Or community. I mean,
Yeah.
we live in a small place, small area.
Yeah.
Name means a lot, right?
Yeah. And that's kind of the next topic I want to talk about. So, understanding, and I think a lot of the listeners that, that heard previous podcasts that know like how small Richfield is and how the community is one of those things where, you, like a family can raise their child, but it takes a community to raise it as well. And everybody knows each other. And, when I look at that and, living there and seeing people that have lost jobs, do you feel that, because how fast, let's say you lost your job. Now the word of mouth is going out like, hey, this person, Paul, lost his job with this company. Do you think it took a blow to your identity in any way to secure another job within the Valley? Or do you think your identity was still strong knowing that you have made a name for yourself?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question and a good point. I don't think I did it alone by any means. I mean, you and I grew up here. Uh, you know, Dad was figured throughout the community and supporting sports and um, work, and he got to know a lot of people. He was a pretty prominent figure in church and the community, and so I think the way I handled it allowed people to maybe see that I represented the name well.
Yeah.
I try not to talk bad about people behind people's back. I don't get into gossip. I don't tell people other people's stories because it's not mine to tell. And so I think, looking back at, I'd like to know how my manager whose parents live in Richfield, I may not have known his parents very well, but they knew of me. But how did my manager in Cedar City find out that I lost my job?
Yeah.
That's, talking about raising a community, helping raise your community is your family. I strongly believe that there was people in the community that was looking after me and maybe have through word of mouth that got back to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of factors, and I take that within my own career field. Even as I start to transition to a new one, there's people that I have interacted, through my military career or through deployments, training exercises, where they'll come up and say, "Oh, hey, you're so and so," and I was like, "Yeah, like who are you? Like I've never met you before. Oh, I know you. I know your name because someone else was talking about you." Or and they
Yeah.
have good things to say. So it's definitely, word of mouth is one thing, but it definitely makes you wonder, who who is looking over your shoulder and taking care of you. Like we have a thing like, hey, do you got my six, right? Are
Yeah.
you looking, are you pulling security on my back? Um, but again, like we had family that worked in the fish and game wildlife. You've spent many years on the fire crew, um, working for the Fish Lake National Fire Service or for the Forest Fire Service. And,
Yep.
when you're, and it's a small community there now, when you're looking at, the GIS and working with all those people, because I know we had a lot of friends that was working the oil crew and working the field out there too. So
Yeah.
definitely makes you wonder, you know, who knew something on the inside that you didn't, or, maybe your manager reached out because he knew that had that job down there in St. George or Cedar. So yeah, it's a question that you would like to know, but it's a question that you don't need to know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You're on a different path, and it's an experience that you went through, and I think it's a healthy perspective that you were saying that it at a tough time in life, you had your biggest joy, right? So you're able to spend time more with Becca and the boys, or especially be there for Bridger for the birth of your second son. So it was unexpected, right? It was not expected, very unexpected, but you're able to give back to your family in a way that you probably wouldn't have if you were just continue working in that same position.
Oh yeah, definitely. I was home. I I could be home, I could support, I could drive up with Becca to Salt Lake to primary children and hospital and be there for them. And it was no question. I didn't have to ask for the days off, right?
Yeah,
I oh it was uh it was truly a blessing. It really was looking back at it. You know, I you had said it doesn't looking back at it now, it doesn't matter some of the other details. I see my old manager every once in a while in town. He lives not too far from here, and his kids play sports, and I see them competing against our kids. And, you know, I don't ever bring it up.
yeah,
I don't need to. I don't
yeah,
need to ask him what happened. It's been in the past. It's the past. I've grown. I've developed. We've moved on. We've developed and I've built a successful, side business, and I work for the state of Utah, and I've got a good job. It's just one of those stepping stones that life gives you, and you've got to figure out how to navigate through it.
yeah. No, it's interesting because I saw, I guess it was like a meme or a real Instagram reel the other day that said if you don't quote me, all right, I might get it a little wrong, but it was saying if you continue to look to the past, you're never gonna come out of anxiety or defeat. And I it kind of struck me pretty hard because for the last almost 21 years, being in the military and now looking forward to my next career, I still look back. I still have all the stories. I still have all the victories of everything I've done. But there's always those small things that come up that still bring, a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of depression, of suffering the things I went through. You know, my toll that I have in my life is significantly different than anybody else's toll. But when you look at, the topic, like we're talking about losing a job, it's the same concept, because you've poured in so much emotion, you've poured in so much um, energy into something that you want to succeed in and do very well, and then it cuts short, right?
Right.
And now it's you have to start fresh again. You have to get back into a mindset of, am I competitive? Am I marketable? Do I have the needs, or do I have the experience that companies or agencies or anyone is looking for? And if I don't, how do I find those, or how can I get those to be competitive in a market that some of us may have no clue what we're doing?
Right. Yeah. I mean, when I told Becca that I was going to stop going to school for become a range manager and do GIS, she's like, "What is GIS? Where are you going to find a job? How much money are you going to make? Can you support our family?"
Yeah.
And they were all great questions. I had no idea the answers to those,
Right.
but I somehow somehow was shown what GIS was, and I thought, dude, this is the coolest thing ever. And I jumped on it, and it's it you know it's been a wild ride. I mean, we went from I went back to fight fires in Cedar City for the summer, um, and I talked to my helicopter manager and said, okay, I'm either going to stay in fire. I'm done with school. I'm not going to school again. I've got a degree in GIS. Can I, and mind you, the Forest Service, BLM, the natural resource groups, they do and use GIS all the time to make maps and manage what they have out spatially. And so I said, well, I can find a job that helps support fire GIS, or I can go find a GIS job. And he was gung ho for me. He was helping me find jobs right and left, opportunities to go do to different fires and be the GIS specialist on that fire or this fire. Take the handheld GPS units and go map fires out and gather the data. I mean, he was all supportive. But then, on the other hand, I thought, well, being a wildland firefighter takes me away from my family quite a bit. Is it the job that I want? And then I finally just said, I'm going to take whatever I get first, whatever comes first. And not shortly after I made that decision, I got a call from a company down in St. George that said, hey, we've heard a lot about you and you do GIS work. We need someone to do that for us.
Yeah.
So we packed up and we moved down there for a couple of years and like I said, it's part of the journey.
Yeah. Yeah. You close one chapter, you open another chapter, and looking back for myself, listening through it, as we would communicate through the timeline. And that's really what it was. You always had a chapter that closed and you had another chapter that opened, but it was still within the same perspective, employment area that you wanted. And then you had, like I said before, you had people in your corner that was also assisting and seeking the employment for you. And that really just goes back to show the hard work and dedication that you have, and how you care about people, and not saying that there's more people out there than what people think. In many cases, they feel like they're doing this alone. They're not. There's no one there to support them. But behind closed doors, there's always people in your we'll call it your hip pocket, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So going through that journey, as you stated, to where you're at now, like you said, you're very successful. You have your own side business. You're working for the state of Utah. How can you look at where you're at today, and what was like maybe let's say two or three lessons learned from what you've gone through the last 10 years, right? To where you're at now, and then what's in the future? What's the big picture look like?
Yeah. A couple lessons learned, I'd say first and foremost, you've got to trust that there's a higher being that's there to help you out. They're there helping guide you. You may not know what's going on and why it's happening to you at the time. And it might be the worst thing that at the moment that could ever happen to you. But if you could just take a moment, think about it, gather your thoughts, and move on, I think that was one of a good lesson that I learned. Another one was I don't have time to worry about or to sulk or cry about what just happened to me. I don't have time to. I've got to move on. I've got to continue supporting and looking for the next thing. because I've got to provide for myself, for my family. Um, it it didn't happen overnight by any means. There was a period of time where our bank account was very, very low, you know.
Uh-huh.
Um, it it does take time, but patience and knowing that I've got to always be out there doing my work, doing the work to try and better myself is another lesson I learned. Um, Moving on for the rest of my career, I don't know where it's going to take me. Professionally, I did pivot from GIS to I work for Utah Department of Transportation's Division of Aeronautics now. I'm the Advanced Air Mobility Program Manager. It's a new position for the department, a newer position within the industry. It's what I'm trying to do is work with legislators to develop a framework, regulatory framework, to bring small package, large package drone deliveries to the state, develop the infrastructure for heavy lift cargo, uh, air taxis, passenger air taxis that could get people from one end of the valley to the other end instead of driving. And so you know, it's new and exciting, innovating, and I think that's what I like the GIS work is because there's always something you can do with the data. If you need to calculate the slope or figure out how to get a road into an area, you can use tools to help you do that in the software. And looking at the advanced air mobility system, I've got support all over the state to do this. I've got support in other states to develop this, and I've got the support from industry. And it does take, it takes a team to do it. And so, you know, a goal that our office has, or the state of Utah has, I wouldn't say our office, the goal our office has is to develop a mode of transportation for air travel for the state that'll last for years. Uh, a goal that the state has is in 2034, the Winter Olympics is coming. And there's industry that would like to be able to use air taxis as a means of transportation to events and venues. And so we've got to make sure we're doing it the right way, building the infrastructure and gathering the right data and working with partners to do it the right way. So, and I contribute the things that I learned back in 2008, 2009 when I was laid off to who I am today and my managing skills. I don't want to be the manager that was on the other end of telling me that I was laid off. Or if I was put in that position or in a position that was close to that, if I'm on the other end of it, which I was, how would I handle it or how would I perceive it? And so it's helped me make sure that I'm, communicating effectively. I'm being more transparent up front and working hand in hand with people, knowing that I've got their back.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just listening, it's quite interesting when you take your position and what you're doing now for the state, but now let's put it all together, the cookie crumbs of, being part, fighting fires, going to work, with the oil service and, GIS, going back to fires and, starting your own GIS job or business and now currently working with the state with aeronautics. It all ties in together because you have a vast array of experience, in a career field where you've seen the vast areas of, of Utah working, being on the ground as a firefighter, being up in the air, doing GIS, with the Helotech crews, going to now your business, with GIS mapping industry, helping small businesses, for the things they've done. You're an avid hunter. Your kids are big into hunting and fishing and wildlife, to what you're doing now. So you see the areas that you can bring aeronomics or drone delivery to the state. Because when a lot of people think of Utah, they just like, oh, Salt Lake City, and
Right.
you've got like Zions, and you have, I totally forgot the other ones, Arches and stuff like that. They don't really understand that if you're not around I-15 or um, the other one out there by Fillmore, like you have nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing out there. It's just a vast land, mountains, a couple of small little towns. So, definitely, I think the state for Utah generally is going in a direction to help those small communities that are out off the main roads. And like I said, your experience in everything you've done in the last 10 plus years is definitely allowing you to lead a project that's going to, benefit everyone that,
Yeah.
is supporting this.
Yeah. Just to add to that, I work, my office is in Salt Lake at the international airport on the general aviation side of the airport. And I'm fortunate enough to work remotely. So I still live in Richfield, get to raise my family here. And I think I'm unique in that way, Chris, like you just mentioned. I see firsthand how that service, package delivery, or the efficiency of using air for travel better than anybody else because I do live in rural Utah. I see the communities here. I work with them. I coach with them. I participate in different things, and I see that, and I think and then the spatial aspect that I have, like you mentioned, it allows me to understand how things can really help and support areas in in Utah, and down in the Four Corners area, the indigenous
Yeah.
people. I there's a lot of things that we could do to help those communities out there through the air, and that's just, I think, with my understanding and background of the area of Utah down in this section, yeah, you're right. It does help support it.
Yeah. Because I mean, the big politicians that stay up north in Salt Lake City, they don't. Most of them have never really left the area, or if they have gone, they have built places to go camping. Which is the big Zions National Park, Capitol Reef, Fish Lake,
Yeah.
out there, or they drive through the southeast corner of Kanab to go down to the Grand Canyon and stuff like that. So they like you said, they don't really see the vast rural areas that Utah has to offer. And I think it's very important for what you're doing. You're looking to support others, combined with self-compassion. You and your office, or your employees, I don't even know how to say it, your group, is definitely making a difference, right?
Yeah.
And we're to a point in society where we're leaning towards drone operations, we're leaning towards AI, we're leaning towards the battery operated, or I mean, you got like Tesla, you got the Cybertrucks, you have all of these things. So we're definitely advancing in a direction, but we also need to keep in mind too that eventually some of that stuff may not work. So we need to go back to the basics.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Understanding how to incorporate, big AI into the everyday mindset of doing things analog and digital again, will continue to push us further and further into the future of everything that we do, and I think, and as I continue to say, I think what you guys are doing is a big step for a lot of, as we know. I live in Washington. I've been all over the world, and there's different states around the United States and different places around the world that may be a little bit more advanced than us, or even specifically there in Utah. Because I remember growing up as a kid, we would go to California to visit friends or go on vacation, and we're like, oh man, we haven't seen this in Central Utah. When is it gonna, when is it gonna come to us?
Yeah.
So awesome. So, really just to anyone out there listening, who's struggling, remember, you're not alone, and you got the strength to go through this. Like I said, you're not alone. There's people continually going through this daily. Especially for me, I'm transitioning out of one career field I've been very successful in into another career field that I'm still kind of confused or lost. And I'm just, happy to, share the journey that we're going through. So Paul, I just want to say thanks for sharing your story,
Yeah.
your wisdom with us today and your journey. It's very truly inspiring because like I said, everyone has gone through something like this, or they're going to go through something like this. And I think it's important that we share, what we've gone through.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you letting me tell my story.
Yeah. Now, I just want to say thank you all for tuning into this episode of Sacred Laughter Podcast. If you lost your job or you're going through a tough time, just know it's not the end. It's a moment to pause, reflect, and start something new. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, join in our conversation, send me comments, questions, I'll definitely go out there and answer them. If this episode resonates with you, please share with someone that might be going through something very similar to this, or someone that has gone through this, and we can share their experience to others as well. Until next time, stay strong, stay hopeful, and remember the best is yet to come.